Hello and welcome to another episode of The Brothers Discuss. I am Alex,
I'm Chris.
and we're continuing our MCU marathon with our discussion and retrospective of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Where do you want to start with this one?
Um, this is a really, really great sequel to Guardians of the Galaxy. I love this movie. Uh, yeah, I mean, it's weird. The things that I liked about the first Guardians, I don't think are as quite as strong in this one, but the things that I wasn't a huge fan of in the first Guardians, I like even more in this one. It's
Hmm,
kind of got that, I guess, symbiotic relationship. They're good companion pieces that way, I think.
nice. Um, I'll say this right up front. I don't think this is as good as the first one.
Sure.
Controversial opinion, I know. Um, with the original movie being a lightning and a ball of success, Marvel Studios essentially gave James Gunn creative freedom to do whatever he wanted with this sequel. It's
Yeah.
bigger, it's brighter, it's bolder, it's got more characters, more action, more
It is
license.
much more of a James Gunn movie than the first.
Absolutely, there's more licensed music and there's edgier topics. I mean, it talks about Ego's penis. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
And as a result, this feels very much like a James Gunn production through and through. And for the most part, this approach works. And not every joke or gag lands, but they come so thick and fast that you never really notice some of the missed attempts at humor. Like even the opening scene subverts expectations with what could have been a climactic battle being relegated to background noise to baby Groot dancing
Yeah.
to Mr. Blue Sky.
Yeah.
I mean, the film does an effective job at poking fun at expectations like that, even if it's mainly in service of a joke.
Hmm.
And while there are plenty of dramatic moments in the movie, if there's an opportunity to take a joke over a dramatic beat, Gunn chooses the joke.
Yeah, and that is definitely the movie's biggest downfall is the I don't want to say forced, but like unnecessary humor at very like key moments. And the best example I'd probably say is like Star-Lord and Ego fighting and Star-Lord becomes Pac-Man. I
Yeah, I was
don't
going to bring that up.
really, yeah, I don't really think. I mean, I get it, yeah, reference earlier, but it doesn't fit in that scene and with everything that's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yeah, the approach doesn't always work, and this is why I think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 as a whole, I think is a notable step down from its predecessor.
Sure,
It's lacking in tonal balance.
sure,
Guardians of the first film may not have dealt with in themes as heavy as this film does, but it had a terrific balance of character development,
hmm,
humor, action, and knowing when to prioritize a dramatic beat.
yeah,
That discipline isn't present here, with what should be hard-hitting moments being undercut by pop culture references, like you mentioned, Pac-Man,
yeah.
um, or like a surprise cameo or a funny music cue. It's not here in the sequel.
It works in some cases, but not in like the third act where all these themes are colliding and character arcs, and you're throwing out all these jokes and references, and like, we don't need that here.
Yeah, and this isn't me saying that I think this film should be all doom, gloom, drama, and pathos, but instead of
Oh no.
the humor being used to allow the audience to empathize with the characters, I mean, filmmakers like Edgar Wright nailed this approach.
Oh, absolutely.
It actually causes a distancing effect in this film, as it seems to belittle a lot of character journeys.
Hmm.
Like, for example, Mantis, the new character, her character is clearly a result of years of living with an abusive father figure, but she's made fun of and mocked at every opportunity to the point where it makes me wonder whether the creative team actively hate this character. And considering the movie's clear overriding metaphor deals with abusive father figures and the long-lasting effect that can have, like it serves to undercut its own themes and approach.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that none of the attempts at pathos hit home. In fact, the best moments of drama in the movie, for me, revolve mainly around Gamora and Nebula,
Oh
who
yeah.
are
That stuff's great.
uh, both dealing with the trauma of being the adopted daughters of Thanos. It deals with genuinely interesting themes like how Gamora disregarded the feelings of her stepsister and was maybe even complicit in her abuse in order to prioritize her own safety. I mean, Volume 2 may miss more often than it hits in regards to its themes of parental responsibility and abuse victims, but I mean, kudos do have to be given to the film for depicting the end result of that
Oh yeah.
abuse in its otherwise jovial characters.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Though I think it does also have to be said that while the film, I don't think doesn't come together as a whole, it's still a really funny and entertaining watch.
Yeah.
Like the comedy sketches may border on the excessive, but they're still laugh riots full of spectacle and terrific quotable dialogue. I mean, I'm trying to think what my favorite joke is. I think I don't know why this one always sticks with me, but it's when Rocket goes, "That's why you don't like hats." Like, that's so great.
Yeah.
Anything stand out to you, comedy wise in this?
I mean, I even the jokes that I do think are unnecessary, they still stand out. James Gunn is really good at humor in his movies. This movie in particular, though, like he's a little too good at it to where like that's just his focus, or I wouldn't say his primary focus, but it's more of a focus than the first one. The first one, I actually disagree with you. The first one actually did have like pretty dramatic and traumatizing stuff. It was just done a little bit more subtle than the second one. And that's not a bad thing at all for either movie. I love the approach of like abusive father figures or praising father figures like Star-Lord and Ego. And I'll go ahead and talk about Ego. I love Ego.
That was actually going to be my next segue. Yeah,
Yes.
Ego.
Yes, Ego is one of my favorite villains in the MCU, and this is one of the big upgrades compared to the first one. Ronan's fine. He is very generic, but energetic at the same time. Ego is such an amazing villain. I love him so much, and Kurt Russell, he's so good, and it's just the relationship that Quill and Ego have throughout the movie, how it's all building up and building up, building up. The trust is building up, and then we're thrown back into why this all happened in the first place, why Ego was never around for Peter. And it's so great. I love everything with Ego in this movie.
Yeah, Ego, I'll agree with you there. Ego is also, he's one of the best MCU villains to date. And not just because of the effortless swagger and charisma of Kurt Russell. I mean, he lives up to his name as an embodiment of toxic masculinity and self-infatuation. Like the MCU, despite normally getting great actors to play them, like often drops the ball with its non-Avengers villains. But Ego is definitely an exception in that regard.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. One of the best for sure. And the main cast, I'll go and say, I think do as well as expected. Chris Pratt he's funny and compelling as a lead. Zoe Saldana does a lot of the dramatic heavy lifting admirably. Dave Bautista is basically solely comic relief here.
He is a riot in this movie.
He is
so great.
He's a national treasure, and he fits into this role very well.
Yeah.
Michael Rooker does great things as Yondu, which I'll put a pin on that. I'm going to talk about Yondu in a bit. But like its predecessor, Volume 2 is an ensemble movie with everyone getting a great opportunity to shine. And a special mention needs to be given to Sean Gunn, who plays the more, I forget his character's name. He's the more compassionate Ravager. Kraglin, okay. He's back from the first movie, and he's got some great moments in this one.
Oh, yeah. He's got an arc in the movie, which is sweet.
He does. And, the newcomers, Elizabeth Debicki and Chris Sullivan as, the new villains, Aisha and Taserface.
Yeah.
And they're clearly having a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
You have any thoughts on Taserface?
He is what he needs to be. And, yeah, I don't really have too much to say. He's a fun villain, I'd say.
Yeah. I wonder if James Gunn's favorite word is metaphor.
Yeah.
Because it was pretty present in the first film as well as this one.
He didn't say the Suicide Squad, did he? I don't think so.
I don't know. I can't remember. I do need to watch that movie again.
Hmm.
But but yeah, I mean, a lot of the elements and composite parts of that audiences loved in the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie are present in this one. But I think with its new additions and narrative aspirations, James Gunn, I think, seems to have lost some sense of tonal control or even basic restraint when it comes to delivering effective character beats.
Yeah.
Um, you know, the cast are game and the production values are there, but with the exception of a few successful character arcs, the film feels at the mercy of its whiplash-inducing tone and real lack of exploration into some of its key themes.
Hmm.
The film on a script and narrative level feels rather mismanaged, even if it's still an enjoyable time. Though with the amount of epilogues the film has and the amount of tears that the characters shed by the end, it makes you wonder whether or not the film was actually aiming for more than that. Yet in the end, it couldn't take itself seriously enough for me. With the exception of one thing, which I'll get into. Do you have anything else you want to say before I get into Yondu?
Let's just talk about Yondu,
Yeah,
the
so
heart and soul of the film.
so here's the thing I do. If I feel like, what would be good today? Some days I wake up and I want to do a workout. I got to go run. Like, I don't want to run, but I got to do it because I need it. Some days I'm like, you know what? I want to bawl my eyes out like a baby and then just eat chips or whatever, Like, I know I can get that from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And this may
Oh
be
yeah,
funny from me saying that, considering I'm like, I don't want to say trashing the movie. I'm being a little more critical of this one than most people.
sure.
But it does have a genuinely touching moment with Yondu
Yeah,
in this
absolutely.
film. Groot got some tears out of me in the first Guardians movie with We Are Groot, but I don't really have that same emotional response anymore because I see it as just a cheap repeat of the Iron Giant. Uh, Maybe James Gunn knew that and he was trying to recapture that, rebottle that lightning. Like
Maybe.
you got me, but that was a cheap move, dude. You can't do that. So with Guardians of the Galaxy 2, they stepped it up pretty big time with the relationship between Star-Lord and Yondu.
Hmm.
You know, Yondu he's a toxic dude. He's a perfect example of that definition. He bottles up all his feelings. He represents them to the world as negativity. He's just mean to you, and that means he likes you. Like that's
Yeah.
like real classic stupid guy stuff. He's a salty old bastard, but he's trying to change, and hanging out with Rocket makes him realize how much the things suck about him do suck. And so everybody sort of benefits positively by the end of this by
Yeah.
processing all this negative stuff. And by the end, Star-Lord starts to realize that Yondu is my dad. So Yondu
Yeah.
shows up like changed. He's in hero mode now, and he was the pursuer this whole time. And all his negativity has caught up to him, and it's ruined him. He's hit rock bottom now because of the way he's dealt with this. And so at the end, he shows up when Star-Lord starts to realize, Yondu actually cares about him. He shows up with his magic arrow and floats down, and Star-Lord makes a joke. You like, you look like Mary Poppins. And Yondu goes, "Is he cool?" And it was a sweet moment because he doesn't know who Mary Poppins is. He thinks it's a dude, which I think is just kind of sweet on its own.
Yeah.
But then Star-Lord processed right away that Yondu wanted him to think he was cool. It's a lame but sweet and well-intentioned dad move. And of course, there's the end when it
Oh.
reaches its peak. At the end, he goes, Kurt Russell's character, he might have been your father, but he wasn't your daddy, boy. And then he dies. Like, that's the last words. Like, that would rip you apart if you were confused about how someone felt about you, and the last thing they said was basically like, "You mean everything to me?" Then he dies. Like,
Yeah.
I put myself in that spot and I
It's
lost it.
heartbreaking.
Yeah, for
Just as
sure.
Matthew said, you are a robot if you don't cry to
That is true. Um, Anything else you want to talk about with Guardians 2?
that.
Anything we haven't touched on?
I feel like we didn't really. I mean, you kind of tackled it, but I the movie very wisely decides to pair up Yondu and Rocket, and that was really really clever to me
Mhm.
because I definitely consider like Star Wars and Rocket. They're kind of like I guess you could say like parental figures of the Guardians. They're always bickering. They're always trying to one up each other. They see themselves as rivals. So they spend basically the entire movie not with each other. Rocket decides to, and Rocket and Yondu pair up and makes their moments sweeter at the end when they go back for Star-Lord. How Rocket and Yondu, they're just reflections of each other. And it's just so great. And I really love what they did there. And yeah, everything with Yondu in this movie is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, considering he wasn't really that fleshed out in the first film to begin with. Like that's impressive.
Yeah, that's really great.
You want to talk about Baby Groot?
Okay.
All right, of the babies of like big popular franchises, which is your favorite right now?
All right, so we have Baby Groot,
There's Baby Yoda, or Grogu, as he's called.
Yeah.
Who else is there? I mean, I'll throw in Baby Grinch from the
Baby
2000s, the 2000s Jim Carrey Grinch movie. Why not?
That one definitely wins.
For sure.
That might be a tough call because Baby Groot is definitely a gimmick in this movie. I will say that. I mean, he's adorable. He's awesome. But he is kind of a gimmick. But there's nothing wrong with a gimmick. There's absolutely nothing wrong with a gimmick. And he's great. And he definitely has, compared to Baby Yoda, Baby Groot has more of that, like, just awesome moments. I might have, but Baby Yoda also does have some pretty good moments with Mando. That's tough for me.
Yeah, fair enough.
I might lean with Baby Yoda just for. Actually, no. I'm gonna go with Baby Groot for now.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and say this right now. I think this is the most gorgeous looking MCU movie. I think.
Really?
I feel this is the most gorgeous one. I mean, there's some really impressive cinematography, and then the blending of practical with CG is really impressive to me.
Sure. I think
the coloring is great.
This obviously we've already said this is definitely much more of a James Gunn film than the first movie. And because of that, you kind of have that James Gunn style of like going really big, weird, and crazy. Definitely a lot more than the first movie. And I think like some of the visuals, well, they look great and everything. They do look, they do look pretty cheesy, but cheesy in a good way, cheesy in a comic book fun type of way. I think that's kind of holding me back from calling this the most gorgeous looking MCU film. I think Doctor Strange might be my pick for that.
That's a good contender.
Or maybe Infinity War too, but yeah.
Anything else in Guardians 2?
I think that's it. Yeah.
Cool. I mean, we real quick, we get our first introduction to the Watchers in this film.
Yeah, and they're kind of heating up right now.
They are, yeah. With I keep forgetting how you say the main Watcher, Uatu.
I don't even know
how do you say. Yeah, it's like
I thought he was just like the Watcher.
Yeah, his name is UAT. It's spelled UATU. I don't remember how you pronounce it, but yeah, that's his name in the comics.
Okay.
But yeah, he's kind of present somewhat in the What If series right now.
Yeah.
Though I think he gets but my favorite moment of him so far is in the Doctor Strange episode where I think
absolutely,
where he directly interacts with the characters. It's that's great.
We're gonna be talking about What If for a second. That was something. I feel like all these Marvel shows so far, I feel like they've all like tried building up to something big. All three of them, or three live action ones we've had so far, and I feel like what they were going to try to do is that throughout the show, the Watcher is going to get closer and closer to interfering with the timeline because you had that moment in the Doctor Strange episode. Then we got a zombie apocalypse. and like nothing really happens in there. So
Mm-hmm.
who knows? But yeah,
Yeah, who knows? Uh, is that it for Guardians 2? Because I
I
can't think
think
of much else to say.
I think that's it. Yeah,
Real quick, soundtrack debate. Which is better?
I'm gonna go with this one,
Okay.
Guardians
I think
2.
I I think I'm still in the camp that I think the first soundtrack is just superb, but there's some really good song
They're
choices in
both
this
great,
one.
but I think this movie not only has like the more, you know, more just like songs you could listen to on a daily basis, but it also has, I would say, more personal songs that connect to the story.
Hmm.
Because yeah, I would say this one.
Fair enough. What is your grade on this?
I think I like this one more than you.
I think so.
So I'm gonna give it an 8, the same grade as the first one.
Nice. I'm a notch below you. I'm giving it a 7, but that's not me saying that I think it's a bad movie. I think it's a really, really good movie. I just wish it were more tonally balanced.
Fair enough.
That's just my logic.
And yeah, that is definitely the biggest drawback is the imbalance of tone. Thanos does not approve.
Perfectly balanced as all things should be. Um, yeah, so I guess that's it. That about wraps it up for the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 discussion. So thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned for our next one, which is going to be probably the longest one that we'll ever do for any of these. That is
Laughter.
Spider-Man Homecoming. So yeah,
We
we've
have
got we've
quite
got
a bit to
some.
say.
Yeah, I guarantee our Spider-Man Homecoming discussion will very likely be the longest one we ever do in this little podcast of ours.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, look out for that. So until next time, we will see you then. Take care, everyone. Bye.